was flipping through them and they look great. Our last author of the evening, James Gurley, is the author of The Man Who Ended the World, Eleanor, and the best-selling novel, Great Fall, among other books and short stories. His work has appeared in a number of anthologies, including John Joseph Adams' Help! Fund My Robot Army. Jason.
Long walk from back there. Okay, can everybody actually hear me? Okay. I like that I have musical accompaniment. That's nice. I'm Jason, and I don't do this that often, so it's kind of fun to be doing it. Like JC kind of referred to, it's nice to write the books, it kind of sucks to read them out loud in front of people. So I'm going to try to not make a total fool of myself doing this, but Eleanor is the book that I'll read from. This is a book that I spent about 13 years working on and just published about 2 months ago. And it's done pretty well. People seem to like it a little bit. And so I thought I'd read a little bit from that. It's a story about mothers and daughters and the terrible things they do to each other and the hopeful things that they try to do for each other. It takes place over many, many years and crosses the boundaries between this world and other worlds, and there's quite a bit of wonder and awe and horrible, horrible grief and utter depression in this book. So I'm hoping I didn't find the excerpts that are the most dreary that will encourage you to not buy it and to leave early. So I'm going to try to read 2 excerpts tonight. The first one is from the beginning of the book. This is the prologue. The Eleanor I'm reading about here is not actually the Eleanor of the title. This is her grandmother, who she was named for. This takes place in 1963. Eleanor sits in the breakfast nook and watches the rain fall. The tree that Hob and Agnes planted 2 summers ago bends sideways with the wind. Even from here, Eleanor can see the earth around its base beginning to pucker. If the storm gets much worse, the tree won't survive. She can hear the rain lashing against the house with each gust of wind. Up above, the attic moans like a Coke bottle as the wind whistles through the rafters. No swimming today, Eleanor says aloud. She's surprised to have spoken the words, but more surprised that they crossed her mind at all. She and Hob haven't gone to the ocean since her accident, which was minor enough. A misstep on the island path, a twisted ankle. Normally that sort of thing would have kept her out of the water for a couple of days, no more. But Eleanor had turned out pregnant again. And that, according to her doctor, made swimming in the ocean a no-no. And no throwing yourself off cliffs either, he advised, upon learning why Eleanor was swimming in the first place. I'm surprised you're still pregnant, to be honest. That kind of physical abuse can terminate a pregnancy in a heartbeat. Hob had babbled on the way home about having a son, but Eleanor barely heard him. Pregnant. Again. As if Eleanor didn't already feel that her life was being written by someone else's hand. She sips her tea now and sighs. She sighs an awful lot now, the air pushed out of her lungs by the weight of her thoughts. Dark, awful thoughts. A few nights before, she dreamed about a man who bothered her at the grocery store. He had been holding a clipboard and a pen, and instinctively, she had tried to step past him. He'd said, "I'll see you on the way out," and let her pass, and she had forgotten about him. But he was there when she finished shopping, and this time, as she tried to slide by, he said, "Vote for Eleanor." And she stopped. "Excuse me?" she asked. "Eleanor," the man repeated. "The whole town is voting on her issue." "What issue?" Eleanor asked. "It's simple," the man said, folding back one page on the clipboard and holding it up for her to see. There were 2 big words there, yes and no. Below each word was a list of names, some illegible, some in neat cursive. Either Eleanor can start over or Eleanor can stay in prison. "Prison?" she asked. "That's right," the man said, without explaining further. "I'm Eleanor," Eleanor said. "Oh," man said. Well, then you definitely should consider voting. It's a tie right now. You'd be the tiebreaker. Isn't voting a private affair? This looks like a petition. Not at all, the man said. But bananas eat for free on Thursdays afternoons. What? Eleanor asked. I said, you better hurry up and vote, because I think you're about to wake up. But she had woken from the dream before she had time to cast her vote. The dream has remained with her ever since, her brain working on the question of her vote while she makes dinner for Hob and Agnes, while she washes dishes, while she sits in the bathtub, the deepest water she's been in for months. What would she have voted? She rubs her belly idly as the storm worsens. She's showing now, not much, but enough that strangers have begun complimenting her when she goes to town. She and Hob haven't made love since they found out. She hasn't been in the mood. He's been worried about hurting the baby, something she thought that he'd figured out during the first pregnancy. She's grateful that this new baby seems to have distracted him from his worries, though. At least one of them is excited. She slips out of the house before either of them wake. The sky is dim but growing lighter. She sits behind the wheel of the Ford and stares up at the clouds, leaning forward to see them through the windshield. They're ominous, almost black. She wonders what the view from above the clouds is like. She thinks it's probably all blue skies and sunshine up there, the absolute opposite of life down here in Anchor Bend. The rain pounds on the Ford like a bag of rocks in a tumble drag. Eleanor drives slowly, both hands tight on the wheel. She rolls through town, the only thing moving for miles. None of the shops are yet open. There are no pedestrians on the sidewalks. Days like this feel a little bit like the end of the world. Everything is still and murky and slow. She drives for a little while, eventually leaving the heart of the little town behind. Like a magnet, she is drawn to the ocean. She parks the truck in the small lot beside the beach, kills the engine, turns off the wipers. Rain courses down the windshield in waves. She can see little blips and plops on the hood, one for every drop of rain that lands on the car. In the distance, she can see the shape of Huffning, blurred by the rain until it's only a cottony shadow. Eleanor closes her eyes and lets out another long, weary sigh. She listens to the rain on the roof, hears the slap of it against the asphalt outside. The ocean has some life today, every wave a low roar as it breaks on the beach. When she opens her eyes again, she has made up her mind. She leaves the keys in the ignition, opens the door, and steps out into the rain. In an instant, she is soaking wet, her nightgown and housecoat clinging to her body. There is a pickup truck parked at the opposite end of the small lot. The only other person in the world arrived at the beach while her eyes were closed. She can see the shape of them inside, perhaps enjoying the weather just like her. But she doesn't wave, doesn't care. The beach stones are black and wet and shiny. Eleanor crosses them slowly, but she isn't worried about slipping and falling down. There are sandpipers puttering around, dipping their beaks into the sand after each wave recedes. The clouds in the distance are pulling apart like taffeta, black, feathery tendrils separating from their bodies. More rain, harder rain. She walks to the edge of the beach and stands there a long moment in her heavy wet housecoat. The waves are needle sharp as they smack her ankles and her feet. She closes her eyes again, hands deep in her pockets, and thinks of Hob and his pleasant smile and his broad shoulders, and his secrets and his carefully parted slick hair, and his deep, sad, true eyes. She thinks of Agnes and her knotted hair, and the wrinkled lines around her little dark eyes when she smiles, and her cute small earlobes, and her favorite song. They'll be all right, she thinks. She pulls her housecoat off, sleeve by sleeve. It grabs at her skin as if resisting, and she casts it onto the beach. She bends over, grasps the hem of her nightgown, the wet flannel squishing between her fingers. She gathers it into her fists, lifts it up and over her head. Naked, she faces the ocean calmly. The rain is bitingly cold. The wind works. Behind her, she hears the muffled sound of a car door opening, and a distant male voice shouts something. She doesn't answer, doesn't look back. Eleanor steps into the ocean and strides forward, the water reaching her knees, her hips. When she is waded in waist deep, she spreads her arms wide behind her, then lunges forward into the water and begins to swim and swim and swim. mentioned that the book is about mothers and daughters and all the awful things they do to each other, and that's the very first of them. That's actually the event that sets the entire rest of the book into motion and sort of ripples down through the next 40 or 50 years. So the next part that I'm going to read is about the actual Eleanor, the title. She's 14 years old. She's been through unimaginable tragedy. She had a twin sister who died in a car accident, and that event sort of sent her family spiraling into grief, and it tore her parents apart, and they can't talk to each other. Her mother can't look at her because she looks like her dead sister, and all of the reminders that come up every time she's in the room are awful and terrible. And her mother drinks, and things are just generally bad, and Eleanor's growing up much more quickly than any 14-year-old girl should have to. And that's when she notices that very strange things are happening to her. She walks through doors in her house, and then she's in a cornfield in Iowa. She walks through a door in the gymnasium at school, and she's somewhere else entirely. And these events are sometimes very damaging to her, and she doesn't understand them. She has no control over them. So this is one of those events that I wanted to read to you. It's not written from Eleanor's perspective, but she is very much the center of this scene. The woman trudges through the bleak meadow. She has grown accustomed to the perpetual chill in the air, but wraps herself in shawls and scarves and hats that she knits from scratchy, dense fiber until she is sealed almost completely from the cold. A cowl beneath her coat is itchy against her neck, and she drags one long fingernail across her skin until the edge fades. The meadow belongs to her, with its damp earth and tall grasses bent flat from the rain. A creek weaves through it like a strand of bulky yarn, twisting and turning. The creek winds past the woman's home, a rough-hewn, single-room cabin that keeps her warm. She can see it from here, just a small speck on the horizon, a single thread of smoke curling up from the chimney. Each morning she walks the meadow. Sometimes her excursions are short and take only part of the day, but often they take several days as she decides to walk the perimeter of the land, where the meadow butts up against the hills. Beyond those hills, mountains rise like broken teeth into the sullen, ponderous sky. She pauses and looks up at the peaks and ridges, then at the scroll of the forest below. The trees swarm like barnacles over the hills, stretching partway up the mountainsides themselves, before scattering, overtaken by rock and shale. The mountains flank the meadow for miles, towering high above the flatland, cinching together at their end. To her knowledge, there is no way into or out of the valley. This land is protected from the world beyond. It is hers, though there is no deed. The mountains are hers as well, and the creek, and the forests, the clouds even. All that she sees is hers. She is the keeper of this valley. Her sole purpose is to protect it, and in doing so, to protect herself. This morning she awakened with a sense of unease in her belly. She tossed back the quilts on her small bed, made some coffee, stoked the fire, then stood on the wooden porch beneath the eaves, smoking a black cigarette and surveying the gray land. She knows that it is sick, that the land has in fact been sick since the day she discovered it, and sometimes she thinks that its sickness has infected her as well. But this morning, she was sure of it for the first time. She walks the meadow now, heading for the mountains to the south, the source of her unease. She can feel a change in the air, a sort of vibration that wasn't there the day before. She's felt such a thing only once before, when the beasts first appeared in the valley. But that was long ago, very, very long ago, and the keeper is not keen to share her valley with more interlopers. And she is certain that this is what she will find to the south, an intruder. The keeper's shadow trembles with curiosity. It huddles beneath the entrance to the great forest, shapeless without the keeper, which makes it perfectly suited for recon tasks like this one. It isn't often that the keeper frees her shadow to swarm through the valley in such ways, and for a moment, before it came to the edge of the forest, the shadow skimmed the long grasses along the creek, joyful in its temporary freedom. But now it must get to work. It slides into the forest, moving quickly through patches of pale light, confidently sliding through the deep shadows cast by the trees themselves. It doesn't know what it's hunting for, only that the keeper believes that there's a thing here worthy of investigation. Not a welcome thing, an evil thing. The keeper has always been careful to keep evil out of the valley. The beasts who arrived long ago were not interfered with because they were not evil, and the keeper sensed that and permitted them to roam. Whatever the shadow is searching for must not be as benevolent or gentle. For hours and hours it winds through the forest, sweeping hundreds of acres, finding nothing. When it approaches the boundaries the keeper has established, the shadow turns and repeats the search, doing this again and again, and many hours later it finally finds what it has been looking for. The shadow understands why it did not find the intruder sooner. It is only by accident that it stumbles across the intruder now. The shadow has taken shelter beneath a redwood to rest, tired from its dogged search. The woods around it are quiet, except for the slight blip of water falling from the pine needles onto the forest floor. The rain has stopped, for now. The girl comes out of a hole in the ground some 40 yards away. The shadow almost doesn't see her, but then the girl coughs. And though the shadow does not possess ears, it detects the tiny fluttering vibration in the air, and it turns and discovers her. The girl is caked with mud and pine needles and small stones and bits of tree bark. She coughs again and stands upright and stretches uncomfortably, then looks down at herself and begins to scrape the packed mud from her skin. The keeper rocks in a handmade chair on the porch. Another black cigarette rests between her fingers, lit and burning toward her knuckles. She has been thinking of building a second cabin. It's not a replacement for this one, but at the northernmost end of the valley, one that she can go to rest her feet during her long walks. The valley stretches for miles, and she is often too worn out from her journey to make it back to this first cabin. A dash of cigarette ash falls into her burlap pants, and she brushes it away. She can see her shadow approaching across the meadow, the low afternoon mist parting around it. It moves stealthily, as if it is playing a game, but the keeper is never fooled. It comes closer and closer, until finally it slips over the porch and reattaches itself to her feet. "You're back," the keeper says. "What did you find?" Her shadow does not speak, but she can feel its memories pass into her, icy cold. She takes them inside, absorbing them into her own collection of thoughts, reviews them quietly, her eyes closed, and finally nods to herself. From the shadow's vantage point, she can see the gash in the tree line, as if a wrecking ball has dropped into the middle of her forest. She sees the lumbering clouds, the rich, wet soil. She sees everything that her shadow saw, and there, the shadow found the intruder. The keeper was right. A naked, pale-skinned girl with soaking wet hair, dark brown, maybe red, stands in the clearing not far from the ruined trees. She is smeared with clay and mud. Her face and arms are scratched. "There you are," the keeper says. "You're only a child, an amateur. What are you doing here?" The keeper examines the shadow's memory more closely, settling on the girl's frightened green eyes. "Where are you from, little girl?" the keeper muses. There is, of course, no answer. "You don't like strangers here," she says. "Do we?" Beneath her chair, the keeper's shadow ripples its agreement. "Be gone, little thing," the keeper says. She waves her hand in a slow arc, as if sweeping the table free of crumbs. Her hand passes through the air with a crackle, as though she has charged the air with electricity. To the south, she can see a dark flash in the forest, like a mirror has been aimed briefly at the cabin and then turned away. The keeper relaxes, then takes a long drag on her black cigarette. The girl will be gone now, ushered out of the valley and back to wherever she has come from. "Well," she says, exhaling charcoal-colored smoke, "if she comes back, we'll know, won't we?" She gets to her feet, pulling her shawl tightly around her shoulders, then looks down at her shadow. It follows her every move, at home, attached to her shoes. She can feel it agree with her silently, mute but not deaf. "Come along then," she says, and she steps down off the porch and into the tall grass. The keeper strolls to the east, picks up her walking stick, and quietly walks through.